Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. You know, if you ask me, I think that the person who invented the knock knock joke should win a Nobel Prize. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at New Cold War from VUCA Simulations. In New Cold War 1989 to 2019 from VUCA Simulations, up to 4 players take on the roles of various world leaders as they vie for dominance and hope to dominate this planet called Earth. This is a 1 to 4 player game. In games of less than 4 players, there is a bot. You can play this game fully solo. I've just played the 4 player game, and that's what I'm going to discuss today. Now, this is a pretty dense game here. There's a lot of rules going on. I'm just going to tell you the basics of gameplay and then what I think. Now, ladies and gentlemen, even though this is a 4 player game, there are alliances here. The EU and the United States are allied, and Russia and China are allied. So, through much of the game, these powers will be working with each other to best the other bloc. However, there can only be one winner, and toward the end of the game, you'll start to see the game become a little more cutthroat between these former allies. Now, most of the game board is the geography of the world, different countries, and some countries are in orbit of some of these powers, meaning they've got close ties to them. But there are also spaces to track prestige, media relations, and several other tracks that will come into play as well during the game. Now, the game lasts 9 turns, and these are 3 turns equals a decade, so essentially you have 3 decades plowed over the course of these 9 turns. And you have some different things that will occur during different turns as you move forward in the game. But essentially, at the beginning of the game, you're going to select an objective card. Now, you're going to get a number of objective cards. You select one, the rest is out of the game. But you still have an objective deck because later in the game, around turn 5, you're going to be able to select another objective card. So that's kind of going to be something you're working toward, another way that you're going to score in the game. Now, in certain game rounds, at the beginning of that round, you can actually exchange one of your cards with one of your block allies. Now, you can do this because when you play a card, you can decide whether it's going to be for the event or for the operational points on that card, kind of like Twilight Struggle. However, if somebody else plays it, your ally, then they will get the operational points, but you will get the event. Now, during the action phase, you're going to have kind of 3 rounds of the action phase. You'll have a total of 4 cards. One of those cards won't be played. You'll go into a leftover pile, but the other cards will be played. You essentially will each simultaneously put them down in kind of a neutral area in the middle of the board, and then you will all at the same time slide them to either the operations section or the event section. Then you reveal them and you see where you are. Now, in player order, you're going to go ahead and you are going to determine is exactly how that card is going to be played and what you're going to do for the operations value or the events. Now, again, the events you can only play if they match your country. So if I'm Russia, only I can play the Russian events. If I'm American, only I can play the American events. If I'm playing that card for the operations, there's several things I can do. Now, one of the most important things you're going to be doing with your operational points is gaining control or attacking your enemy's control. Essentially, for a number of points, you can look around the board, and it kind of shows the number of those countries. If you can spend those that number, you can remove an enemy's control, or you can insert your own control. You can also place or remove stability. And how you do that is essentially you can place kind of your tiny little marker on there to show that you've got stability. And that means that in future, if you want to go ahead and place something there, it costs you one less. However, your enemies can also try to remove that before you get a chance to actually take advantage of it. Now you can attempt coups in places, essentially changing the control from your opponents to yours. That may have some wider repercussions there. One of the things you can do is you can attempt to influence the tracks. You can use your OP to try to change your place on the prestige track or on the media track. Now, where you are on these tracks is also going to affect various other aspects of the game as well. So it's ideally you want to move as far up as you can. Turn order can be affected by that as well. Now, you can also create an OP reserve here. Essentially, you can put a marker in the middle of the board next to the cards, and this shows that on the next round you will have an additional operational point to use. Now, players will have the ability to veto in certain circumstances. They can go ahead and take a veto token from their player board, and they can actually veto an event on a card if it's particularly damaging to them. Now, there is only a limited number of veto tokens you have, and there is always a cost involved, usually in victory points. Now, at the end of the 3 action phase rounds, you're going to go to a kind of a scoring round. You're going to put your leftover card into a leftover pile. Now, all of the cards that have been used where the event was triggered, they are going to be out of the game. But any cards that were not used for the events, they're going to go into leftover piles. The card you don't use go in the leftover pile. It can come back into the game. So first of all, here in scoring, you're going to look at the prestige track. You're going to see if you've scored anything along the prestige, any points you get for being on there, or negative points. Then you're going to do global scoring. You're going to look at the different regions on the board. Who's ever got the control there, met their objectives there, will go ahead and they will get the appropriate points for that region. You're going to score sub-regions. Sub-regions are areas connected by lines. If you control every country on that line, you score the sub-region. Once a sub-region is scored, it is flipped over. It's out of the game. No one else can score that sub-region for the rest of the game. Finally, you're going to go ahead and look at your objectives. If you have succeeded in fulfilling your objective, you can score it then. So players are going around and around. They are exchanging cards with their allies. They are playing cards onto the board. They are either playing them for objective points or for the events. They are moving up and down on the prestige track and on the media track. They are scoring the globe. They are scoring the sub-regions. And they are scoring, again, any objective cards they may have. If at any time between turns 2 through 8, a player manages to score both of their objective cards, they win the game immediately. If, however, the game continues until the end of turn 9, the player with the most victory points wins. New Cold War. We'll get back to the review in just a moment. I want to take a minute to ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about history, books on history, military history. I even post some of my lectures for my classes on there. Please check that out. Please subscribe to that channel. And now, back to the review. All right, so that's just the bare basics of the game. There's a lot more going on here. It's a relatively heavy game. Now, it's not a super heavy game. I'm not suggesting that it's inaccessible, but there's a lot going on here. I think the rule book's like 50 pages, but it's actually a fairly easy to read rule book and easy to navigate rule book. But just know that going in, there's a lot going on here. Now, the game really has in its DNA Twilight Struggle. You can really feel Twilight Struggle at work here with, again, a lot of factors, notably the CDG element, the way the cards are played for either the event or the operational points, but also too the way you're trying to gain control over the various regions. It just feels like a 4-player Twilight Struggle when I played it with 4 players, and I've only played it with 4 players. Now, critically here too, again, this is covering 1989 to 2019. So essentially from the fall of the Berlin Wall to the global pandemic. And as you're playing through the game, again, after each decade, so after 3 full turns, 3 full rounds, you're mixing in the cards from the next decade. And again, cards with the events have already triggered, they're out of the game. And it's a pretty interesting system how that works, how you mix them in. Again, it owes something to Twilight Struggle there, I feel. Now, the game, one of the aspects of the game that is very interesting and is not like Twilight Struggle, because Twilight Struggle is just a 2-player game, is here you've got this element of co-opetition, right? You've got 2 players who are in a block, right? The red block, and then 2 players that are in the blue block. And you are working together to kind of counter the other block a lot. But then again, at the same time, there can only be one winner. So as you're approaching the end of the game, you find yourself more at odds just as much with your ally as with the other block. And that's a very interesting thing. I like games that do co-opetition and do it well. I'm thinking here of Churchill or Pericles by Mark Herman. Those both have co-opetition elements to it that I think are pretty cool. And New Cold War, I think, does it very well. One of my favorite aspects of the game is one of my favorite aspects, again, with Twilight Struggle, and that is I like the cards. I think there's well over 100 cards here. I can't remember how many cards there are, but there's a ton of cards here. And they've got really good moments from the last, from those 30 years in it. And it's kind of fun to kind of relive those and see them gamified in important ways and what advantages they give to specific players or not, It's really fun. They do a really good job here of incorporating the history into this kind of mechanic. Now, gameplay itself, I really like that moment where you all are putting a card in, but you don't know how that card is being played. You all simultaneously decide how the card is being played. Then you flip it and you kind of go from there. I really like how that plays out. That leads to some tense moments, some fun moments. It's fun when you're playing, an event card and somebody doesn't like it and they say, yeah, it's worth the victory points, and they veto it and it kind of screws your plans. I really like that aspect quite a bit as well. The whole action phase, which is really the heart of the game, is great. I loved it. Now, I will say, too, we found some of the scoring stuff a little confusing. We found some of the ways the prestige track and the media track work. We found it a little confusing. And ultimately, we were able to get through it and find it, but there's a learning curve. So be aware of that. There's a learning curve on some of these things. But when you actually find out how all these systems come together, it's pretty cool. It's pretty fun to see how these different things play off of each other. This is a game you need to invest some time in to learn, but I think if you do, you will be well rewarded. I enjoyed this game because it is a little bit heavier and you have to have the right people playing it, which is so true of so many games, right? I don't know that it's one I can get to my table a whole lot, but I think when I do, I will really appreciate it. On the Cody scale, I'm going to give New Cold War a 7 out of 10. I think it's a pretty great game. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us here on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on Facebook, on Twitter. We love to hear back what you have to say, Board Game Geek. We'd also ask you, ladies and gentlemen, to please subscribe to this video and like it as well. Please give us a thumb on Board Game Geek. We'd also ask you, ladies and gentlemen, if you really do like what you see here on this YouTube channel, I'd ask you to check out my other YouTube channel, Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about history, military history, fun things like that. It'd mean the world to me if you would subscribe to that channel as well. And if you really do enjoy what you see on this channel, I would humbly ask you to click on the Super Thanks button and leave a tip. Here's a piece of advice for all of you moms and dads out there. Stop questioning your parenting. Start questioning your child's childing.
Please somebody help me on my feet again. And I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band. God knows that I love to fight.
So I was actually faking you out. That's I'm not a dubious or dubious maybe.
I don't know, you're pretty devious when we play those risk games, Al.